in the nonprofit group, right?
I think that's right. I mean, unless people haven't, I think there's a recommended changes that Bishop's made.
I think there's a 50% discount in the licensing agreement for nonprofits.
Well, that's what we're recommending. Our feeling is that would be a fair approach. The board certainly can look at it however they see fit.
Can you give us an idea how many of the uses, how much of the usage really is, quote, nonprofits who are paying?
222 this year, right?
222?
Well, understand that some of that is in the way we're accounting for it. To give you an example, let's look at...
Not the police and stuff like that. Where is
No, but let's look at Rybrook Youth Soccer. Okay, if you look at Rybrook Youth Soccer, we're counting that as a field utilization. They're there 5 days a week. Not specifically Rybrook, but combined Rybrook Youth Soccer and Portchester Youth Soccer. Well, we're finding out that Rybrook Youth Soccer is really not affiliated with Rybrook Recreation, that they are a separate group, that Rybrook charges them for practice time and field utilization time on Rybrook's fields. The Blind Brook School District charges them for field utilization and practice time on the school fields, but Crawford Park charges them nothing for utilization of Crawford Park. You all know about the summertime problem we have with traffic at Crawford Park, where we have simultaneously during the week Council of the Arts Theater Camp, 50 to 60 kids. Rybrook Day Camp, upwards of 300. I think there were over almost 350 this year. Right after they start to move out, we have incoming either Rybrook Youth Soccer or Portchester Youth Soccer. And then come 6:30, we have Rybrook Men's Softball or Portchester Men's Softball coming in right around 6:30. That would be a typical day during the summer between, let's say July and August. That's what happens there.
The mansion, I think the mansion is where we really have the biggest problem. I mean, according to your chart, you have 227 uses at no cost. And that's just not done anywhere else in Earth, that you just say, I'd like to use your catering hall for free, no matter who you are.
Well, it's not. The utilization is not quite the same, but for example, we count all the days that Council of the Arts Day Camp is in there. Well, they're in there 5 days a week for approximately 6 weeks. So you're talking 30 days right off the bat is Council of the Arts Day Camp. And you're absolutely right. Our guys have to clean it. Our guys have to supply toilet paper. We're the ones turning the lights on. We're the ones doing the maintenance and the cleanup. Same thing with Rybrook Day Camp.
Take, for example, ball-field soccer. I mean, there's never going to be a, quote, for-profit entity playing soccer. I mean, it's not like IBM is coming to rent a place to play soccer.
Well, if you saw some of the fee structures of these soccer clubs, and I'm talking about specifically Portchester Soccer and Rybrook Soccer. We're not talking men's, we're talking kids. I mean, they're charging $500, $600, and $700 for each of these kids to participate. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily, something that we're entitled to, but
one might surmise that cost is that one of the costs of playing soccer is to have a place to play it. So when you're charging $500 a kid, there is a supposition that there's going to be some of that money's got to go to have a field.
Well, to give you an example,
in our case,
right? Unfortunately, that's not the case, and
I
think that one thing that we need to talk about is to review. And I mentioned to Ms. Herman before, review and reduce the event schedule through other municipalities. Okay, and these are good examples, but it's not. We're absorbing the burden.
Well, it's one thing to reduce; it's another to pay for it.
Well, no, I think it has to go hand in hand. I think it's both, because the park itself, I think, is overburdened with use. Okay, I think that we need. I think this year you did a great job, Bishop, accommodating everybody. Okay, down to the minute. You've accommodated everybody. You've done a yeoman's job. But there has to be a time when we need to turn around and say, okay, we're going to start to reduce some things now because they're getting it for free. Okay, so it's not that they could go someplace else for free. Because I'd like to see other places that have this venue give it away for free. Maybe somebody else or another municipality or another facility needs to start to be more open and accommodating to these events and to these organizations. I think we've been very understanding. I think we've been a great neighbor, but we have to start to think about maybe enough's enough.
I think we could, we're going to do a lot of talking this year with our neighbors that we should talk about some more intermunicipal agreements and maybe in exchange for usage of our parks, they take care of our parks. I mean, that could be another way we could save money on equipment, manpower, everything.
There are any number of ways we can look at this.
That's
One
actually,
might say
sorry.
One might say that if people pay for our park, we would then have the money to maintain the park.
Well, I guess there's two different things. One is, I think what I'm understanding, Mr. Nowotny, your suggestion is that we charge the NGOs effectively 50% of the cost.
Well, that's what we're recommending.
And that, okay, so it's a 50% increase, but I think it's commensurate with what the board sentiment is. That's one thing. The other thing is just in terms of following up on Councilwoman Mendocino's comment. An issue we should talk a little bit about tonight, and more on Saturday, December 11th. The Village of Rye Brook has approached us and want to talk to us about potentially doing something with the garage. Their lease ends in the year 2015, and basically they have the property in Crawford Park, about an acre, Elm Hill Park, and what they'd like to do is consider an exchange of Elm Hill Park for our holding in the garage. Now, we've got to do some numbers on that and figure out what's a fair exchange and look at the assessed values. And one of the things we talked about in terms of maybe privatizing Crawford Park was potentially we could have the Village of Rye Brook pick up the maintenance of that park. So as you're suggesting, and that's one way for them to compensate us for the garage. And then, of course, if we did that, we probably would need less space for our own equipment as well. So, yes, that's a wonderful suggestion in terms of reaching out to our sister communities. And another thing we'll talk about on the Saturday. I just wanted to introduce that as an idea. I've introduced 2 or 3 concepts tonight that we'll pick up on that Saturday, December 11th. But in terms of, I think the proposal is pretty clear. I like the proposal Mr. Nowotny's put together. I, for one, would recommend we adopt the plan as proposed, and we charge NGOs 50%. I think that it gives us a lot more order. Is there anybody that wants any modifications to the plans as proposed by Mr. Nowotny, or should we simply adopt it as proposed?
Did you want to invite public comment first before you adopt it?
Certainly.
No, I mean at a future meeting, to get the Friends of Crawford Park and to let them comment on the specifics of the plan before you adopt it.
No, not really.
I think that, have you consulted with the Friends of Crawford Park on this?
We were at their last meeting, and we gave them all of the data that you have in front of you now. So that was one of the reasons why Eleanor Herman stopped by earlier.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we adopt the plan as proposed tonight? When we meet with the Friends of Crawford Park, we should sit down and go through this with them. If they have any fundamental objections to anything that is proposed here, we'll bring it back to the board as such, and I'm very confident the board will take it up and amend it if need be.
I mean, their primary their input and all their help and assistance and work, a lot of it is towards the horticulture and the trees and that sort of thing. This is a thing about how much you're going to charge to throw a wedding. Is really, we don't really.
Well, I think, and what I mentioned earlier when I was talking to Mrs. Herman is that part of this policy is reducing the impact on the park. And so, and it almost seems like we got her endorsement, but it was probably good to get the endorsement of the entire organization. That being said, I have two items I'd like to propose to the board with regards to the policy. I've mentioned them in the past, and I'm going to mention them again. I'd like to propose that volunteer fire companies located within Rye Town can use the facilities within the established policies one time for free per calendar year.
Well, if we're taking it, but why, if we're just taking away the free for everybody, why would we?
We're not taking away the free for everybody. You're still.
I thought we took away.
No. Well, if you review carefully, we're talking about certain municipal exceptions, and we've allowed for municipal exceptions in there. I think Attorney Noto's recommendation of perhaps having a public hearing would allow, for example, for many people, this may be the first time that they even understand there are significant changes coming about for Crawford Park. It may be beneficial to allow the public to come in, those organizations that are going to be affected by some of these changes. Maybe we're opening up Pandora's box, but
No, I'm happy.
What's the big change? You're charging more to have a wedding, so, I mean, okay. That's it.
well,
Caterer doesn't usually ask you to give your opinion if you want to pay more to hold the wedding. If you don't want to hold your wedding, don't come.
Well, we have, for example, the limitation of field use before April 15th. I know that the soccer groups all want to start on April 1st. We have had weather-related issues. We have had field damage because they go out there a little too early. And as a result, for example, this past year, we spent over $4,500 just in grass seed alone. Forget about any kind of topsoil or anything else.
When are people coming onto the field now?
Excuse me?
You're limited to April 15th. When are they currently coming onto the field?
April 1st.
So,
And they're talking about, they try to schedule their various practices and things of that nature, so they try to schedule that in advance. They may take some issues with that.
are we, I kind of lost you along the way about the cost. Are we going to now charge them?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm leaving, to the board to take a look at, but our recommendation is sure. To give you an example, Rybrook Youth Soccer begins their practices roughly around 3:30, and they end roughly at 5:30. Well, that's about 2 hours, and why wouldn't they? I mean, understand they use virtually the entire park. The idea of saying, "Hey, pay us $60 a day, pay us $300 a week to continue using the park." If you look at the season,
hold on. Sorry,
Yep.
hold on. So I apologize. What are they paying today?
Zero.
Nothing.
Okay.
Did you ask what they're paying the village of Rybrook?
No. But I just wanted, because I thought you said earlier that they were paying $30 for 2 hours.
No. That's what our fee is normally. If you wanted to go in there with your family and you wanted to have an impromptu softball game, you would pay us $60 to use the softball field for 2 hours.
Right.
Or, God forbid, you wanted to play soccer, you could do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, look, I tell you, why don't we have a public hearing? We're not going to, I mean, all this is basically December anyway, so we'll finish it this year. So why don't we hold a public hearing, give everybody opportunity to come and say their piece and do that. And the other thing, Bishop, I think would be helpful in this sheet is you need to put the current policy versus the new proposed policy.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
Okay. So
that being said, Joe, I think maybe we need to rethink the time that the meeting's going to start on the on the 14th.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we should go back to 7 o'clock now. We're going to discuss this policy, and if we're going to approve the budget or potentially approve the budget that night, I think we need to have that meeting for 7 o'clock. So I'd like to make a motion.
Well, before you do that, yes, I think that's right. So let's do that. But Mr. Nowotnik, would you contact the various groups that are going to be impacted by this change in policy?
We already have the mailing list ready.
Okay, but make sure we contact them and let them know. Sorry.
So I'd like to make a motion that we hold a amend the time that we're going to hold the public hearing in December 14th to 7 p.m.,
That's for the budget.
not 7:30. I think that we need the extra half an hour.
Right.
The budget may